everyone. I'm Alex Jonathan Brown, a senior copywriter at Iron Horse, and thank you for joining us for the latest event from the Enterprise Growth Alliance. Today, we're diving into the results from EGA's Investment Insights Report for 2024 budget planning and taking a look at what you and your company can learn from how the fastest growing companies are planning to invest in 2024. I'll be honest, sometimes hosting webinars is hard. I have to think a lot. Today, not really one of those days for me. Today's an easy one because I'm joined by three people who are basically just going to be smart and run this whole thing by themselves. And I just get to listen and learn with you. From Iron Horse, the VP of Marketing Strategy there, Barbie Maddie. From Demandbase, VP Strategic Marketing, Sandra Freeman. And from Netline, Chief Strategy Officer, David Fortino. How's it going, everybody?
Excellent.
Doing well, thanks.
Great. So, Barbie, I know you were kind of one of the principal authors of this report for EGA. You know way more about it than I do.
Well, yeah. No, thank you for that. And I'm a fully self-aware data nerd. I love it. I love using data to make decisions pretty much for everything. It drives my husband nuts, though, on the personal side of the house. But as I'm sharing my screen, what I wanted to do is tee up kind of the source of this data, what we looked at, and why. So Iron Horse conducted a B2B marketing survey for all B2B decision makers. And we ran the survey for the data to be used for the Enterprise Growth Alliance. And as a former Forrester analyst, one of the ways that I love to look at data is I like to bucketize it into look at what companies that grew did and look at what companies that didn't necessarily grow as well. So what we're going to do today is go through the results of the survey data. In total, we had 400 people take the data. But when we looked at only companies that grew annual revenue, so we're calling high growth, annual revenue growth of 11 to 40%, which is pretty good growth considering today's economic uncertainty. And so we're going to dive into one specific question from that survey. And the question's pretty, it's pretty straightforward. It's what's the most important outcome that you're trying to achieve with your next planned investment? And these are big macro categories of outcomes that we're talking about. So without further ado, I'm just going to start sharing the data, and then my colleagues and I can start having fun with it. So what you're seeing is the primary question that I mentioned. What's the most important outcome that you're trying to achieve? And so what we did is we looked at the companies that were growing annual revenue 11 to 40%, the green bars, the high growth. And then we wanted to do a side-by-side comparison of companies that were flat to growing annual revenue 10%. Why are those our boundaries? Because that's the way we could cut it and still have it be statistically significant. And so as we were going through in preparation for this webinar, what David and Sandra and I kind of noticed and really wanted to dig into with this first data slide is increase in net new logos isn't in the top 4. It's efficiency, retention. Enter new markets is more for the companies that are flat to only growing 10%. But then increase in net new logos is really far down on the list. So, David, why do you think that is?
It's a good question. When I looked at the data, the thing that was striking to me was really that increasing customer retention and expanding revenue from current accounts were both higher for companies that are experiencing growth, yet the companies that arguably needed the growth we're only focused on retention a bit less so, and trying to expand revenue diversification from those existing accounts less so as well. And they seemingly were busy trying to grow into new markets, yet that it's so much incrementally harder to grow into a new market than to just grow an existing relationship with the customer. So yeah, to me, in my mind, that was the most perplexing thing out of all of this, which when you kind of look at it and you're like, well, of course you're flat or only up 10%. It's because you're ignoring your customer base. So yeah, I'll kick it back to you. But I mean, that was something that really stuck out to me, and it was shocking. Yet at the same point, it's kind of like, well, yeah, perhaps the data is doing the talking on their behalf and their lack of performance.
Yeah, and that's why I like this slide, and I'm really excited for Sandra to weigh in. But I do want to circle back to one of the comments you made earlier after Sandra weighs in, because I mean, this is controversial. I mean, everybody's trying to go after new business. Everybody thinks that's the golden ticket.
Yeah, I think back to what David said, it's more expensive to acquire new business, but it doesn't mean we're abandoning new business. It means that we want to just be more efficient across any segment that we're engaging with. I'm going to borrow a quote from a friend of mine, Heidi Bullock. She's the CMO at Telium. And she's always said, I'm a marketer, but I'm also an investment banker. And so the money that you give me to help impact the business, I'm really responsible for that. And I want to have it really work to the best outcome. So I think about, if you give me $1, I want to give you back $10 in pipeline and $3 in win, the 1-10-3 golden rule. It's efficiency, whether it is new business or with customers, that's really top of mind right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that I really like about this bottom piece is about, increasing the awareness of the solutions. So one of the to Sandra's point, we're not saying don't focus on new business. If there's one takeaway from this webinar, or that's what we're not saying. We're just saying that it's about finding the optimal balance between net new, retention, upsell, and cross-sell revenue. So one of the things that we always have to equip ourselves with is, well, if we're being told to go after new business, how do we say yes, but, meaning no? And one of the ways that we can do that is say, well, when a company is able to grow through their current customer base, that's a really strong indicator that your products and services are resonating in the market. And that makes it that much easier to attract and convert net new buyers. So anything else to add, David or Sandra, before we go to the next slide?
Okay. I don't think so. No, it's perfect.
Okay. Well, now we're doing the big summary. So the top 3 results across the board were efficiency, retention, and expansion. And the sample sizes are statistically significant, but look at how close efficiency and retention are. They're like 1%, 1 point different, one sample size. And so when we're thinking about the most important outcome being efficiency, retention, and expansion, we took it that next level down and said, okay, in order to achieve those outcomes, who are the people? What are the demand and ABM programs you need to do? And what technology do you need in place to support that? And so why don't we start with you, Sandra, with your observations of this data?
Yeah, well, I was excited looking at this because the efficiency then applies across all the different segments, as well as new business, right? And exactly. The way I look at it is what segments, where are we winning? What can I focus on, put more energy there to improve win rates there as well, and just be really value-based, more relevant to the right accounts, really looking at that technology piece, the right accounts that are going to pay off for us, the right people, and at the right time. So really listening, using technology to understand signals, whether it's, intent searches or activities on our website, bringing that all together, which in this chart is a lot of the people, the MOPS, the data, bringing that all together to execute those really effective segment strategies and have effective results with that. So I'm really looking at segments in my 2024 plan. Which are the ones that we're doing well in? Where should we double down? Maybe what's not working as well that we should do less of? And then also what channels might we want to test so that over time, those can be the next channel that we put more emphasis into.
And I love that you mentioned value, because that's so important. And when we were getting together in preparation for this, I did want to point out on the efficiency piece that intent monitoring is on there, but it's a super low percentage. So only 7% are saying they're going to invest in intent monitoring for 2024. But that's not saying that they don't have it already. So what this is saying is they have it, they're going to extract more value out of the tools that they already have, and then add to augment what they're missing. David, did you want to chime in with your views?
Yeah, absolutely. I think before touching on intent monitoring, which I think is really interesting as you get to technology used to kind of feed all of these things, the one that really stuck out to me as peculiar is the having a more connected buyer's journey, which is, it's the only one of these that really put the buyer in the kind of driver's seat, saying, well, I'm going to be considerate and be empathetic to my buyer and provide the best experience possible to drive revenue growth. All of these other attributes are very much self-serving, internal only motions, internal only operations, initiatives, people, executions, technologies, and so on. So I thought that was peculiar, because I think the companies that have the best growth tend to lean towards product-led growth-based philosophies, initiatives, and if not both of those, then certainly technology is actually accelerating that. And that's all about creating super connected buyers' journeys. And it doesn't even stop after that first purchase has been secured. But then going further, the intent monitoring thing is peculiar only because of the fact that intent, I believe, is largely relegated to net new. People think of it in that way. And they think of it only in the way of chasing accounts and or domains, right? IP addresses that are being resolved to a domain, not really knowing who inside accounts are actively expressing intent. And more importantly, what are they actually doing? And I think there's a huge amount of momentum around buyer level intent data and how that's changing the space. And what does that mean for marketers, for selling teams, for go-to-market motions to effectively understand what their accounts are doing outside of your world, but also what they're doing inside of your products, and how can you mine that for cross-selling, upselling opportunities?
No, I really like and appreciate that perspective, and you're right. And now you're pointing out that the next time I do this survey, I have to ask questions internal facing and external facing. But your point is very well made, and the thing that I love about this is the consistency in the pattern. So regardless of, if you're going to try and do retention or expansion business, efficiency should always be a business goal. That shouldn't be like the only way you grow. That should just be the undercurrent all the time. But I love that that overarching, more connected buyer experience has such deep roots with data and analytics, content development, the tools people are going to buy. So the reason why one of the reasons why I like looking at data for high growth companies is because what they select in the survey data makes sense for what they say they're going to do. And there's not a mismatch in the data where it's like, I'm going to go do ABM, but I'm going to hire, an SEO person. Like I don't ever see that in the data that high growth companies do. Any final thoughts on this slide before we dive deep into efficiency? Okay. So now we're going deep into, when we say people, programs, and technology, we're going to go into the efficiency side of this and just show some of the charts. And for lack of a better term, we're just going to provide our insights, not speculate, but we're going to provide our insights on why we think these are the outcomes and what you can do as you're using this as an input to help with your B2B marketing, what you can do to apply this wherever you are in your job. Who wants to start this time? All right, I will. So let's go ahead and just for level setting on the layout of the slide, we've got people, programs, and technology. The number one hire is ops, number two is data analytics, and then content development. So this is just a blown out version of the roll up that you saw before. One of the things that we wanted to point out here is on that 7% from the intent monitoring on the slide before. The call out that Iron Horse wanted to make was that, if you're not using intent to monitor your current customers to see what they're doing with their competition, then that's a miss. And so that's one of the things that you absolutely have to do and extract that value to be more efficient with your technology so you can apply that to your retention as well as your expansion goals. And then you have to adjust. You have to look for these new threats and then adjust your marketing mix and your messaging to accommodate that, which in theory would optimize your paid, make a more connected buyer's journey, and build audience-centric content to do all of that.
So Barbie, quick question for you. Can you provide some clarity on the people side of things? And you had referenced that, in percentages of importance of hires. Is that correct? I just want to validate that before chiming in with some additional thoughts.
Yeah, the way the question is worded, it's a kind of a nested survey. So it said, okay, your most important outcome is efficiency. What's the number one role or skill you plan to hire in order to support the achievement of your efficiency outcome?
Perfect. Yeah. So it's peculiar to me that marketing ops is so large there only because of we've never been in a better position as marketing leaders to leverage technology to streamline marketing ops, right? Mm-hmm. So if you are focused on scale and you see your marketing ops team growing linearly with that scale, I'd argue you're doing something wrong. There's more tools now than ever before. A lot of them are incredibly cheap. And so you don't need to be thinking of this from the enterprise lens only. There's a ton of incredible AI tools that can be hacked together to make marketing ops incredibly efficient. And yes, you still need super talented people. Arguably, maybe some critical hires should be made there and less just doers. But that was peculiar. So yeah, thanks for the clarity. I just wanted to make sure I was reading that. And I think that number's a little alarming to me, quite honestly, knowing what I pay attention to in the space.
Yeah, totally. And honestly, coming from Forrester, the symbiotic relationship between the CMO and marketing ops was my summit presentation. And people were just like, oh, this is great. I never thought of that. I'm like, I was a marketing executive analyst for advising B2B CMOs. And the number one thing that I would do is, who's your ops leader? What do you have on your ops team doing? And the biggest disconnect, actually, I wouldn't call it a disconnect, but the biggest ask for somebody in ops is they need the CMO to provide the air cover for them so they're not stuck doing the tactical administrative ops work that's solely focused on measuring demand. Ops is such a broader range of capabilities that can really be utilized here. They can do annual planning, they can align your revenue engine, they can automate experiences for a better customer experience. So, and one of the things that, I will let Sandra chime in.
I'm lucky, I would say, in that we have a really strong MOPS team at Demandbase, and I get access to so much data. And I wanted to share one of the things that they do, which I love, which is a quarterly business review that is across segments and across programs. And it's an objective way to look at what is working, what is not working. We all look at the same, we call it multi-touch attribution. We say, okay, if you give me that dollar, what did this program generate? And back to what I was saying before, that is built in. You have a consistent muscle for that. And that helps you then determine, okay, 2024 planning, I know these three things are the biggest drivers of pipeline and win. And so I'm going to put more investment there. And so for me, if I answered this question, I wouldn't have put MOPS because I've got that. But if you don't have it, like you need it because you need to feel really comfortable in those answers and in making your decisions and saying, I'm going to spend more on, for us, webinars still continues to be really great. It works really well because it's strong content. You can use it for a long time. And so we're going to keep doing that, and at a certain point when it doesn't work anymore and you see it there and you can, adjust. So,
well, and I bet your ops people have provided you with the data to show that your customers prefer to interact with webinars. And so that is why you keep doing it, because you have the data and the results to support that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on efficiency besides just reminding everybody that this should be status quo and you should always try to be more efficient and effective with your dollars?
Yeah. I had one other one just for everybody that definitely works for us, which is partnerships, and really putting an emphasis on working with partners, building your programs with partners. You'll get a higher reach, lower risk, lower cost. It just time after time, those programs have a higher MT ratio when partners are involved. So we always love to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's a really good connectivity point back to that original chart where we were showing the companies that were trying to grow through new markets, because growing through new markets, as David already said, is it's just one of the hardest things to do, but it's the right thing to do. And it's the most efficient and effective way to grow when you're trying to grow through new markets, is to leverage that partner ecosystem.
Yeah, I think my only additional commentary on this slide is really around the programs. And please realize, anybody who's here is understand the interconnected nature between those that are represented on the chart, right? Like none of those exist in isolation. They actually all interrely on each other. So you need audience-centric content to fuel a more connected buyer's journey, which then you're running through paid media and optimizing through outbound. So I would say this is probably largely true with a lot of this stuff, but I think don't hyperfixate on a specific metric here.
Yeah, it's the connectivity of all of this. And that's what the data is showing. It's showing that people that, want to grow and want to continue to grow are thinking about, the business and not just their swim lane, which is a really important aspect. And that's the best way to drive efficiency. Okay, now let's move on to retention. And this is just the way it was worded was just increase customer retention. So once again, we've got the people, programs, and technology. Sandra, why don't you start on this one since I started the last one?
Okay. I loved what David said about super connected buyer journey, which obviously includes through the whole customer life cycle, right? One of the things I was going to share that we're really doing to try to operationalize that is understanding what the customer wants to achieve and defining the top 3 value metrics and putting that into CRM and actually having that pull through the whole buyer's journey, from the sales rep putting down what are the top 3 key metrics they're trying to achieve. Having onboarding understand that, having the CSMs focus on that, having the growth account directors focusing on that, using it in the QBRs, right? So that value-based focus, we're actually operationalizing it. I'm super excited about it, even to the point of having a field that says, what was the time to that value? And then being able to measure that. And it all circles back. It's all connected back to content and marketing programs also. So focusing on, David, what's your word? Super connected buyer journey. And I think understanding what they're trying to achieve and really focusing on that and operationalizing it is exciting. And we're working on that all the time.
Yeah, that's excellent. David, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'm seemingly like a magnet to statistics that argue with each other, right? So you've got, on the people side, you've got content development being rated relatively lowly at 13%. Yet on the program side, it's the highest, which is building audience-centric content. Now, down at the bottom, technology, it's still high, which is good to see, but there's some alignment or misalignment, I suppose, with respondents and how they're interpreting the prioritization of people versus programs. And so you could say, yeah, audience development content programs are critical, but if you devalue the people that it takes to do that well, clearly you're never going to be able to run audience-centric content campaigns that are super connected, right? And responsible for driving a phenomenal buyer's journey that yields into revenue-based outcomes.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I noticed those, I don't want to say anomalies because they're not, but it is a curious view to call that out about content development. And the way I thought of it is they probably already have content development people, but what they're doing is adding content development people to write content, do ideal customer profiles, do all of the stuff B2B marketers do for net new business, but you have to do it differently for your existing customer base. They're a different journey. They need different messaging. They have different interaction preferences. And so my hypothesis behind the kind of the mismatch of the data, as you said it, and rightly so, was that they're doing this now and investing this with the lens of specifically focusing on retention because it may have been neglected in the past. Would you agree, disagree?
Yeah, I like that hypothesis. And I think this is another great example of where like PLG-based philosophies can really yield a lot of insights to fuel your content development team that can then create richer audience-centric campaign executions, especially if you're using your product's own data sets. So do you have a ton of features that virtually no one uses, right? So if you're trying to retain them, you better make sure that the majority of those features are exposed to those clients well before it's time for renewal. How do you go about doing that? Create amazing content, drive people through journeys, expose them to those features, and so on. So yeah, I like your hypothesis. I think there's a lot probably to unpack there.
Yeah.
And Barbie, I just also wanted to share one of our key focuses is around ROI, making sure it's really easy for customers to quantify ROI and show results. And so one of the things we're doing, we call it an ROI cookbook. So it is content that is very specific, started for customers that says, this is the use case, this is the recipe, here are the steps, being very prescriptive, your expected outcomes. And so this has been a really interesting process because the customer is first, the recipes are for customers, but I do know over time I'll be able to edit that and use it in new business as well, right? And then use content for the long term as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that also kind of ties into, from an efficiency perspective and a retention perspective, like you want to make sure you're targeting the right customers to begin with. Because, say, for example, you're a B2B marketing firm and you only sell to B2B businesses, but some rep accidentally wasn't trained and sold to a B2C. Well, that's going to ding your retention. So you've got to make sure you're getting the right customers to begin with so it doesn't ding your retention. And then another cool tip too is just come up with, I always talk about doing an ideal churn profile. So you've got your ideal customer profile and you've got your ideal churn profile. So you know kind of what behavior to look for to be able to predict when somebody might not come up for what might not be renewing. Okay, last but not least, we have expansion business, and this is upsell, so selling more to somebody who's already bought, and cross-sell, which is selling more to an account that's already bought. I just always find it's good to level set on that definition because they tend to get lumped together as one motion, and they're not. So who wants to start this time? I liked actually how much of a tie there was with this. They're tied with marketing ops and data. They're tied with content and program planning. I like how program planning snuck in here, because when you're trying to do expansion business, you realize there's a different motion to upsell and cross sell than there is to net new. And then do we want to talk about the elephant in the room on this chart? I'm sure David's going to bring it up, about how optimizing outbound appeared as one of the top two.
Pick me. Yeah, it's peculiar, right? Because you already know the account, you already know the stakeholders. There's no more important kind of internal advocate than your existing customer inside that organization today. So leverage their personal relationships inside the organization to reach out to peers, to influencers, to maybe adjacent business units even. Running paid media would be the last thing I would do in that case. And it would only happen, quite honestly, is if I was really struggling leveraging our internal advocates inside the company to influence organic growth across the organization. I suppose there is a tertiary need to kind of use some probably reinforcement materials through paid material and reinforce brand once you realize who you're targeting. The downside there is, again, you're targeting an account. You aren't certain that you're actually targeting the exact person that you're looking to target. So there's arguably more efficient ways of doing this, and definitely more cost efficient ways of doing this.
Yeah, I agree. Sandra, did you want to weigh in on optimize outbound? Because that did eat quite a bit of our time when we were preparing for this. And I mean,
the way I looked at this was a little bit more around potentially multi-threading and trying to develop new relationships maybe that you don't have, either with new personas in an account, if you can then sell a solution that a cross-sell solution that you're not engaged with that persona at the company, or maybe even subs of the company, and using paid media and very targeted, segmented approaches to basically say, you have this relationship, you have this, did you know that? You could do this next. But yes, the direct relationship, always best, I think, but there are some ways to, depending on the size of account and who you're trying to reach, that you could be very targeted with that outreach. And then I was also thinking about the intent side and what we were saying about it's often thought of as just net new, which I believe I agree with. I do think, though, with watching for intent signals for competitive, both externally, what the account is searching on, both by buyer persona, like the person's like searching on like trust radius for you and your competitor as an example, and watching for those signals, especially when it's connected to a renewal date, and being able to alert the right people that this is happening, and then taking the right steps using automation for education, et cetera, is a really good use case to use intent for.
Yeah, and I think, with buyer level intent data, you're really able to dive in super specifically down to the individual, the job level and the job function of a person inside an organization. What are they doing? Down to also exactly what they're doing, right? Not just topics, but if you were monitoring, let's say, your known accounts, and then you're trying to find which accounts are engaging with content from your competitors that has specific verbiage in the title of their ebooks or their webinars or so on. Things like that are incredibly powerful, right? Low volume always, but incredibly insightful, can kick out real-time notifications to your sellers, to your marketing team, and so on. And then you can action that data either programmatically or feed that straight into an AE who can reach out to the account and make sure that you're best representing your full suite of capabilities. And making sure that the customer and or their peers has the best sense possible of what you can deliver value for.
Yeah. Well, and then in the spirit of being super connected, to do any sort of expansion business, you have to be super connected to your product management team so you know what your cross-sell, upsell strategy is. That's kind of step number one, right?
Right, building those feedback loops, right? And then ensuring your customers are able to share that and then take action on it.
Exactly. Well, we're coming up on time, and we really appreciate everybody's patience today and attention. So, what we wanted to do, these high level takeaways are in the report, so you have the opportunity to download this, and I believe we're sharing this presentation afterwards. But we just wanted to go through kind of the top 5 things, because hopefully you saw in the presentation there was a clear pattern across all of these outcomes: efficiency, retention, and expansion, similar people, similar programs, similar technology. So there's an opportunity here to kind of leverage what these high growth companies have managed to have done to manage to grow, and just kind of remove some of the guesswork out. And what we're saying is, why just settle for one when you can grow all 3 ways and find that optimal balance between the net new, retention, upsell, and cross-sell, so you can be more efficient with your dollars and your results. I'll pause there because I want everybody to be able to weigh in. But that's my 2 cents for now. I believe.
I was going to yield to Sandra, but she didn't jump, so I'm going. So, I think the key here, right, is definitely emulate high growth organizations. There are a lot of the things that we focused on were kind of diametrically opposed and very clear as to why low growth organizations were what they were. The value of intent data is clearly unsurpassed, I would say, in providing you deep insights into behavior inside of your accounts if you're looking to either retain and or expand. Net new, very clear. Number 4 is really interesting to me in expanding your idea of what your ICP is. And so there's a tool that we'll drop into the chat and or follow up with you afterwards, or you can just hit me up on LinkedIn. It's called Audience Explorer. And it's a free ungated tool that allows you to actually research what your buyers are doing before they ever find you over the past 180 days. Provides real-time transparency into who these individuals are, what type of content that they're gravitating to in terms of title, topic, and format, and industry and sub-industry and so on. What's cool there is it kind of like breaks your paradigm in thinking, well, my ICP is just this binary, right? Well, it turns out there's a lot of gray in it. And so if you're understanding what's happening beyond your own website, you can start to ingest that and internalize that, think about it, and then act upon that when you're creating your content strategy.
Dave, can you repeat the name of the tool?
I know.
It's called, so I'm from Netline. It's called Netline Audience Explorer. And it's available on the homepage of netline.com under the resources section. It's completely free, ungated. And it's a cool glimpse into all of the data that we process on behalf of our clients every single day. But it gives you a taste of what's possible. And more importantly, hopefully it offers some value for you to make some informed decisions today that get their way into your marketing campaigns tomorrow.
Yeah.
Love it.
And just to be like sort of a host, Ellen and I both threw a link to that in the chat. So if you're watching live, it's right there.
Thank you.
Thank you, sort of a host. I appreciate it. I guess
No problem.
My summary would be like point number 3, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to add roles, but just lean on your MOPS and your data and your analytics. Your MOPS team should be partner with you, help you understand what's working, what's not working, to make those decisions about where to invest and help you segment and where you're going to focus, where you're winning, and help you to have that $1, $10, $3 rule work for you so that you can have a predictable model in your plan.
Fantastic. And I think we just wanted one more time to just mention that we're not saying don't focus on new business. That's not the takeaway, just to be crystal clear. But what we're saying is, that the next investment, if you follow this kind of blueprint, then your next investment is going to allow for a much bigger return, which will allow you to make that revenue stream balance shift even more optimized. And then it's really all about setting and teeing this up So you can have that intimate knowledge of the buyer and the buyer's experience and the customer experience, if for those of you who use different terminology, to the point earlier that David made about making a more connected buyer experience. And it's about that super connectivity. So it's about connecting with the buyer, but you also have to be connected internally with your revenue engine across sales, product, and marketing. Because if you're not connected, that experience will be seen outside the company. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Back over to you, Alex.
Great. We've actually got a question from the chat earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow. We were all vibing so well. Going all the way back to kind of that first slide when we were talking about the different priorities, were we able to control that for business size and or maturity? This is a question from Tyler M in the chat. I know from the data side, I've seen that those numbers exist. Did they make it into the report, or is that something that didn't?
Well, I wanted to. What I had originally done is I looked at the data for under $1 billion companies and over $1 billion companies, because that's kind of the best pivot when you're looking at kind of that SMB to enterprise split. That 1,000 employees is a good split. But the more important angle to look at was growth rate. And when I did revenue and growth, the sample size was too small to be significant. So great question. We have that data by revenue band, but when we layer them on top of each other, it was more of a focus group than statistically significant. So I'm all for focus group and directional data, but I like statistically significant data more.
And various old people I talked to in grad school, my professors would agree with you. It's important, if you're going to use numbers, to use them right. Okay. David, Sandra, Barbie, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and joining us. Barbie, thank you for doing my job for me. I will Venmo you $10. It just made my life easy today. So if you want to learn more about this report, it is available online at enterprisegrowthalliance.com. You can also, while you're there, check out some previous webinars and stuff we've done. There's a lot of good info there if you're wired in this kind of way. And yeah, once again, thanks everybody for your time. Is there anything you guys want to plug while I've got you here? We'll turn it into a real podcast, either websites, LinkedIn's, whatever you want to do. Go nuts.
Let's plug that Audience Explorer.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Is there anything you want to plug from a place you work at?
Yeah, I think one of the things we do have that's pretty interesting is we call them pipeline acceleration reports. So it's something we can definitely help with if folks want to see how to use intent against certain accounts and keywords, and happy to share some of those insights with folks, more custom, like for your specific needs.
Yeah, and I've got two more. So there's the Audience Explorer is basically a live interpretation of our annual content consumption and demand report that analyzes close to, I want to say, 6 million leads that have been delivered on behalf of our clients. So it allows you to really dig in deeply into buyer behavior, what your ICP is doing, view Audience Explorer as a free companion to that. And then lastly, we did launch the first buyer level intent data platform, which clearly I've been sprinkling nuggets about throughout the session. You can get on the wait list for it. If you do get accepted, there's a 14-day free trial, completely no catch to that at all. What's cool about it is pulls in buyer level transparency on the intent landscape, and then also uniquely marries in online and offline event intent data from our parent company, Informa, that actually owns and operates about 500 trade shows and conferences around the world.
Excellent. Well, that's kind of hard to follow, but I feel like I have to plug something now. What I was going to do is if you're interested in this data and you want to hear Iron Horse is doing a coffee break on this topic in December, but we're going to dive deep specifically into content with Christine Polowarczyk from Path Factory.
Awesome. Yes, please sign up for that. I think I'm also hosting that one too. We'll see.
Yes.
And again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you soon. And everybody, thanks for your time. Have a great rest of your day.